Perfect.
Good evening. Welcome to Kashrut's class. Before we get back to batel being nullified and our concepts of nullification, I thought we might explore an important question. How was Turkey initially accepted, and why do we...
Coleman, can you mute so that we can hear, because the car nose makes it so we can't hear the rabbi.
Oh, I can't hear him either. Let's
So
see
if you mute, then we can hear the rabbi.
I'm not sure I know how to, but okay. Did that work?
No, you're still not muted.
Oh.
Can you as an admin mute him?
I'm sorry.
Can you as an admin mute him?
How is that now?
No, I'm still here. Coleman, do you see like a little microphone at the bottom or on the side of your screen?
I'm looking for it.
All
Or do you
right.
see like 3 little dots somewhere?
Yes.
Can you click that and see if there's that mute the microphone button there or no?
I just muted him.
You've been wanting
Thank
to do that
you.
for a long time, haven't you?
So, okay. So, the question is, how was turkey, the food, the bird, initially accepted, and why do we continue to eat it today?
Some do, some don't.
Because, okay, now, this is from an article by Rabbi Dr. Ari Zavatsky. Okay, but the claim is that turkey is a New World bird, and because Moshe Rabbeinu was familiar with all the birds in the Torah's list of forbidden fruits, turkey could not have been on that biblical list, and therefore must be permitted. Right, because the list of 24 broad categories of birds, is exhaustive. So, analysis. This claim is fallacious, as the list is not a list of species in the modern taxonomical sense, but rather 24 broad categories of birds. Thus, it is likely that the New World birds, the American bald eagle, the California condor, and the crested caracara, are all non-kosher, and had Moshe been presented with them, he would have subsumed them under one of the 24 listed names. So too, it is theoretically possible regarding the turkey, and its being New World does not prove it is kosher. Claim 2. We rely on the Masorah of the South American Indians because they are the 10 lost tribes. Of the 10 lost tribes.
They are what?
Analysis. Unfortunately, there are serious people who actually make this strange claim. In reality, there is very little evidence that any of the 10 tribes are in the New World, and the South American Indians were certainly not keeping kashrus to the extent that any of the people who make this claim would actually rely on them. Claim number 3. We rely on the Masorah of the Jews from where the turkey came, India.
India? The turkey came from India?
That's what he's saying here. Analysis. In the first centuries that the turkey was consumed in Europe, many people indeed believed it originated in India. Hence the Hebrew and Yiddish names Tarnagol Hodu and Indai Ken, Indian chicken. And there are various ancient communities of Indian Jews, Chochini, Bnei Israel, Bnei Menashe, but the turkey did not come from India, so even if the European rabbis were willing to rely on the Jews of India, they had no such Masorah.
I have a question for you about India and turkeys.
Oh boy.
So there's so much poverty and hunger in India. Like, how do they keep these birds alive long enough to fatten them up?
It's a mistaken thought that the turkeys came from India.
Okay.
They did not.
Accept that.
Claim number 4. Ashkenazi Jews do not rule like the Ramah in this halacha. So as noted, here's our analysis. As noted, it is not only the Ramah who rules that a Masorah is required. The Shulchan Aruch rules that way as well. To claim that Ashkenazim do not require a Masorah is to say that they rejected the halacha as decided by both of the major codifiers. In light of this, most of the later authorities reject this idea and rule like the Ramah that a Masorah is required. So all of these things are causing the turkey to be called seriously into question here as a kosher bird. Claim number 5. Ashkenazim accepted the turkey as kosher prior to the time of the Ramah who required a Masorah. Analysis. The Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, lived from 1530 to 1572, and the turkey was likely introduced to Europe in the early 16th century. It is difficult to know if Jews started to eat the turkey before the Ramah published his work, but even if they did, it is hard to imagine that such a recent practice would have gained traction once the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah issued their rulings. Furthermore, the Ramah did not initiate this requirement. His main stringency was rejecting the goose comparison. Most previous authorities had already accepted what Rashi in 1105 who died in 1105, had stated many centuries earlier that a bird can only be accepted with a Masorah. Thus, there is no reason to think that Ashkenazim would have accepted a Masorah-less bird even before the Ramah.
I didn't get that.
So this is pretty interesting. So the Ramah comes around, the Ramah dies in 1572. He is the one who said that we require he's among them, who said that we require a Masorah tradition regarding a bird, right? So So most previous authorities had already accepted what Rashi in 1105, so many centuries earlier, had stated that a bird can only be accepted with a Masorah. So it's not like the halacha became that when the Ramah came. So how were people eating turkey, which only arrived in Europe in the 16th century? Because it had no Masorah.
Masorah is tradition?
Masorah is a tradition, right. Okay, claim number 6. Turkey was first accepted by Sephardim. It was Ottoman explorers who introduced it to Europe, hence the name Turkey. and the Ashkenazim accepted it via the Sephardim. Analysis. It is highly unlikely that anyone, Sephardim included, would have accepted a Masorah-less bird. After all, the Shulchan Aruch rules, as do earlier Sephardim, and a Masorah is required. So it's not only the Ashkenazim, according to the Ramah, but also the Sephardim, according to Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Mechaber, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, that a Masorah is required. Claim number 7. Turkey is essentially a big chicken and is thus subsumed under the Masorah for chicken. Analysis. Chickens and turkeys are related, but not very closely, and don't much resemble each other. Using modern taxonomy as an indication of the distance of their relationship, they are not even in the same genus. although they are usually considered to be in the same family, Phasianidae. To permit turkey as a type of chicken would open a huge Pandora's box, as there are many species of birds more closely related to the chicken.
Is it quail or?
Right, quail is kosher.
Yeah. That's what. Well, what's Cornish hen?
Right, that's more related to a chicken, I would say, a Cornish hen. Right. Okay, eighth claim. According to some authorities, the ability of a bird to hybridize with a known kosher species demonstrates that the bird is also kosher. And since turkey hybridizes with chicken, it must be kosher. Analysis. Turkeys and chickens do not naturally hybridize. With difficulty, such hybrids have been produced in the lab, but they're not fertile. This is likely not what it was meant by hybridization, proving a close enough relation for the Masorah of one species to suffice for another species. Okay, claim number 9. Since we know that previous generations ate turkey, to stop treating it as kosher would be impugning the earlier generations. Analysis. This is indeed a halachic concept of motzi la'az al harishonim, slandering the earlier generations. Okay, and regarding birds, this concept might be invoked in two scenarios. It might be invoked regarding, so in other words, we're not allowed to slander previous generations, saying that they did wrong.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's an interesting point. I think that should be really stressed.
Okay, so this concept then might be invoked regarding birds in two scenarios. It might be invoked regarding a bird that was known to have been eaten in prior generations, but is no longer treated as kosher because of a lack of a living Masorah. And now there are those who want to permit it again based on this principle, arguing that to continue forbidding it is motzi la'az al harishonim. This principle is not relevant in such a case, as the current prohibition in no way casts aspersions on the behavior of the earlier generations. It would be like asserting that because rice was eaten on Pesach in Talmudic times, for an Ashkenazim to refrain today is wrong because of this principle. This is a mistaken application of the principle, because when it is known that a gezerah was accepted, a gezerah is a prohibition, a specific prohibition. So when it is known that a specific prohibition was accepted, the current prohibition does not malign the earlier generations. Anytime the contemporary prohibition has a reason that was not applicable in the earlier generations, there is no concern of motzi la'az al harishonim, of slandering the earlier generations. Meaning just because the halacha changes in later generations, we don't say that the earlier generations were doing bad, right? There just wasn't applicable halacha, right? This happens in law all the time, right? The law changes. So, and we're not saying that the previous people were guilty of anything, or okay. The second scenario in which the principle of motzi la'az al harishonim, so slandering previous generations, might be invoked, would relate to a bird that is treated as kosher when logic would dictate that the initial permissibility was erroneous, such as a turkey. One might then argue that stopping its consumption would violate motzi la'az al harishonim. It is known that turkey consumption by Jews was commenced subsequent to the Masorah requirement, and thus seems to have been erroneous. However, ET. I'm not sure what this reference is, ET. Okay, however, ET quotes sources that if it is clear that the earlier generations actually erred in halacha, then one may or must actually change the practice, and doing so would not violate motzi la'az al rishonim. The need to change the practice is only when it can be proven that the initial decision was wrong, such as if Turkey were indeed determined to be a doors.
Is that one of the categories of birds?
I guess. Thus, this principle certainly does not explain why Jews started eating turkey and would also not justify its continued consumption. Okay. Claim 10. In general, a Masorah is required in order to permit a bird because of the concern that even with positive kosher signs, the bird may be a doris, but the predatory behavior has not been observed. Okay. A doris being a predator. Okay. Turkeys have been raised and observed for centuries. Their behavior is very well known. They are known to not be doris, and therefore they can be permitted based on the other physical indicators. That's the claim. Analysis that is indeed the reason a Masorah was initially required. Okay, let's do this. Should I do that one again? Okay, in general, here's the claim. Claim number 10. In general, a Masorah is required in order to permit a bird because of the concern that even with positive kosher signs, the bird may be a doris, a predator, but the predatory behavior has not been observed. Turkeys have been raised and observed for centuries. Their behavior is very well known. They are known to not be doris, predators, and therefore they can be permitted based on the other physical indicators. This is the argument. An analysis of this says that is indeed the reason a Masorah was initially required. And that is why some authorities permitted the goose comparison. But the Ramah rejected the goose comparison or any other means of circumventing a Masorah and required a Masorah for all birds. Furthermore, even for the Mechaber, the goose comparison was the only accepted alternative to a Masorah. This suggestion is a valiant post facto justification offered by some serious poskim, but would never fly ab initio, so lechatchila, and thus may explain why we continue to eat turkey as kosher, but would not explain its initial acceptance. All right. Pretty cool, because we're not going to get any answers here.
Oh, really?
All right, 11th claim.
Okay.
There is a Masorah on turkey. Ask almost anyone from the older generation, and they will confirm that they and their family and their community ate turkey without hesitation. So I know a Levi, the family name is Segal, and one of their ancestors was a Talmud Chacham who rejected turkeys, and so they do not eat this. And so if you asked anyone in the Segal family, then this might not hold true. Ask almost anyone from the older generation, they will confirm that they and their family and their community ate turkey without hesitation. Not necessarily true. Okay, but anyway, that's the claim. The analysis is, I think this is the most persuasive argument for the continued treatment of turkey as kosher, is what Dr. Zavatsky is saying here, but I can say that that's not necessarily true. You got to be careful who you're asking. There's indeed a Masorah, and no one questions its existence. It is not our job to ask our grandparents from whence the Masorah came. We, in general, rely on the previous generations for all Jewish traditions, and this should be no exception. The burden of proof is on those who want to prohibit turkey rather than on those who want to maintain its status quo as kosher. Thus, the existence of Masorah explains the continued treating of turkey as kosher. It does not explain the big questions of how and when that Masorah originated. Those are indeed fascinating questions in the realm of history of Halacha, questions for which I, Rabbi Dr. Zavotsky, have no satisfactory answer.
Still an inconclusive
Right.
chapter.
So, yeah. We in general rely on the previous generations for all Jewish traditions. So, also a hard statement to accept, because, I mean, it's pretty interesting that the generation that we are in is kind of froming out. Froming out, meaning becoming more and more religious, and definitely more religious than previous generations.
I saw that.
So if you watch these old films, so and I'm talking like 50s, yeah, not so old. So where you get gedolim like at camps, and you see the women there, the level of tznius, and sometimes particularly like shoulder, or the length of sleeves, it was not. So it wouldn't be acceptable today, and so it's not the case. It's also not true, that statement that we in general rely on the previous generations for all Jewish traditions. So, I mean, yeah, we're froming out here, and at least the previous generation in America and in Eretz Israel were more lenient on questions of dress, for example. So, okay, but very interesting stuff, I thought. Also, we have a holiday coming up. So, well, we don't have a holiday coming up. So, but Thanksgiving is coming up, and I thought I would say a few words about Thanksgiving and non-Jewish holidays in general. So there is a halakhic principle that we do not add holidays to our calendar. So the question arises with something as innocent as Thanksgiving. So hoda'ah, so giving thanks is what we do. Okay. The Chinuch says even that this is the essence of Judaism, right? He said this. He's a Rishon, so who wrote the Sefer Chinuch. He said that Hakaras HaTov, showing gratitude, is the crux of Judaism. That encapsulates everything about Judaism, and so it's hard to see what could be inconsistent with Thanksgiving, with the holiday of Thanksgiving, right? You can make that case. Okay. However, Rav Moshe Feinstein ruled, unequivocally no. So we do not add holidays to our schedule. However, Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, who lived in Boston, he would teach at Yeshiva University here in New York. He had the practice of ending his lectures early on Thanksgiving in order to return to Boston in time to celebrate Thanksgiving in Boston, because he felt that it was incumbent on us to show gratitude to the Medina in which we live. So to the country, the nation, the government in which we live. So that was his practice.
Canadians in England have a different date for Thanksgiving, don't they?
I don't even know that they have Thanksgiving. No? It's an American thing. Okay, so what about, okay, but let's say that you're invited to a Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah, does this mean you can't go to the Thanksgiving dinner? Okay, first of all, we've got a lot of Kashrut questions, but does this mean that you really can't do it? And there is an approach that says that as long as you are not like putting this on your schedule every year, but that you're accepting an invitation of a friend and they are celebrating Thanksgiving, then it's okay for you to be there, to incidentally to as they are celebrating Thanksgiving. So that would be a valid solution.
We're getting almost close enough to getting the table together that we might be able to, in the next couple of weeks, start having it at our house again.
Okay.
It's funny that this holiday comes with the turkey involved, and both situation has a kind of a divided opinion in a sense. Like turkey and Thanksgiving is a kind of like a tough ground.
Right.
So it's funny, both things relate to each other. Thanksgiving is the turkey of the communities, in a sense. You're like somebody say yes, somebody say no.
All right. So I hope that helps with the idea of Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So I mean, of course, other religious-based holidays present much greater problems of avodah zarah, so of idol worship. There we're not supposed to be involving ourselves, right? So. But Thanksgiving, just because of its nature, does present real questions for us. Because it does seem innocuous or even in keeping with our principles. Okay, so after that breather, then let's get a little hardcore kashrut done. So we said last week the following prohibited foods cannot become batal, cannot become nullified due to the unique character of their prohibition. and we talked about davar sheyesh lo matirim, a thing that would become permissible in the future. Right. So chametz, right, is a good example. Okay. Also, we talked about tevel. What is tevel?
It's the part that is not taken the truma.
Right. It is produce for which truma has not been taken. Yain nesech. Yain.
Wine
There you go.
that hasn't been
So yain nesech, wine that could potentially be used for libations, for avodah zarah, for idol worship. Okay, fruits of Shavis.
Oh, the 7 year.
The 7th year, right? The seventh sabbatical year. So these fruits never become batal. Which, by the way, big problem in Chutz La'aretz, right? Because then there's product dumping by non-kosher Israeli sources. That they dump these things in foreign markets, and so normally we're so excited to get fruit from the Holy Land. Unfortunately, particularly around the sabbatical year, we should not be so excited. We should avoid it like the plague. So.
Yeah, Jaffa oranges are a big thing. You know? People really like that.
Right. Good example, Jaffa oranges. Okay. And as a davar sheyesh lo matirim, as a thing that will become permitted in time, chametz itself then is something that is not nullified at all. Right? So even in a mishehu, even in a tiny, tiny portion. So, and because of that, then we have to raise the game for Passover. That's really the whole reason, because chametz will not be nullified, will not become nullified. Okay, there's Calvin. How did that happen? You were here before. All right. So, also in last week's class, we said the following prohibited foods cannot become batal because of their prominent nature. Good evening. Again. So, a beria. What's a beria?
Our?
Beria.
There is
Or a brudia.
Is that on the lung?
No.
No.
there is not like a piece.
It's a creature. So a
like
whole creature, a whole bug.
Oh, right, a whole bug is no good, but a part of a bug you can just find.
Right, a whole, exactly. So, right, a whole insect cannot become batal. So even be'elef, even in 1,000 parts, but if its leg falls off, then the leg can become nullified in 60, let's say. Okay, a chatika haruya lechiskabed. Okay, chatika is a piece. We had a
live animal?
in Berlin. One of the members was a fishmonger, and he used to be called to the Torah, and instead of giving increments of chai, he would give chatika dagim, chatikos dagim. So he would give pieces of fish. Yeah, so like sides of fish for us for the kiddush. So, yeah, it was very nice. So chatika is a piece. Haruya, so is fitting. lehischabed for a guest.
Oh,
Right? Okay, so in other words, we want to give our guests the best, and so we don't want to compromise at all on a piece that's fitting for a guest, and so it's not going to become nullified at all. Right? Because that would mean that we were compromising. Although that's really kind of a difficult stance to take because we've said that we should not question nullification, right? So but even so, this is the halachic concept of a chatika harua lischabed, a piece that's fitting for a guest. Okay, then another prohibited food that cannot become batal because of its prominent nature is a davar shebeminyan, so a thing that is counted, or a thing that is in other words, a thing that is counted in units, right? So like apples or oranges. So if we've got a problem, potentially if somehow we have I'm using a bad example, but let's switch it to an egg. An egg is counted in units. Comes in dozens, right? So if you have a non-kosher egg that gets mixed in with kosher eggs, then we've got a problem because that thing will not become nullified.
What's the reason behind that? It's just how it is.
What's the logic with a davar shebeminyan? It's a good question.
There was one example you gave, I don't know if it's for this principle, where you give, like you tithe something to the priests, but if you don't, you're not able to like know the exact numbers, you don't know what their portion should be. Like and like I can't remember, it was within the last week. I don't know if it was this principle though.
Okay, I think because it's counted in units, it has a cheshivas. Yeah, it has an importance about it, right? So if you nullified that, then the whole counting system would go under, right? So you can't by its very nature, then you can't nullify it. Mm-hmm. Okay, to understand the logic, so let's read the definition here and see if that helps. So an object that is sold solely by unit is considered prominent and cannot become batal. For example, a whole egg of a non-kosher bird that became mixed into other kosher eggs is not batal berov, since eggs are sold by a number, a dozen. Right. Okay, that didn't help with our reason why, but yeah, it's going to undermine the count if we start nullifying the individual units. So we can't do that. Otherwise, we got a balagan going. All right. Okay, so we also learned that certain prohibited foods cannot become batal since they are in some manner noticeable. Nicker. When the prohibited matter is either A, noticeable through unremovable, B, removable although it is unnoticeable, C, added to the mixture to give it color, or D, added to either solidify or gel the mixture, it is not batal. Right? Okay, so I mean, if it's noticeable, that makes sense. Even though it can't be removed, if it's noticeable, then you've got this non-kosher thing in there that you can see, right? So
You're talking about
Then-
like non-kosher food coloring and frosting?
we're not getting to, we haven't gotten to, we're getting to coloring. So if something is in there, it's noticeable, even if it's, let's say, batal b'shishim, potentially batal b'shishim, so that it's potentially nullified in 60 parts. Even so, you can see the thing. Yeah, you can see this prohibited thing, but you can't remove it. Something's ground up a little bit, right? And too much of it, you can see it, and that if you couldn't see it, then it might be nullified, but you can see it, so forget it. It can't be nullified. Okay, that was example A. Example B, removable, although it is unnoticeable. So, yeah, if we filtered something, we might be able to get it out, even though we can't see it. It's in there. But if we had the right equipment, then we would be able to get it out, but we don't. So we don't have the right equipment. So we've got this removable, prohibited thing in there, and so in that case too, it's not nullified. Okay. C, added to the mixtures, what Hadassah was after, added to the mixture to give it color. So even though it's a tiny amount of a prohibited substance, and they used, Hadassah pointed out last week after the class, that they use bugs to make some of these colorings, these food colorings, right?
Specifically the shellac for like things like, for lack of a better word, like that looks like an M&M or something like that, where it has that shiny coating.
Right. So, because this color is pervasive everywhere, even though technically it might be nullified in 60 parts, we're not going to call it nullified because we can see the coloring, right? All right. So, and finally, added to either solidify or gel the mixture, then it is not nullified either. So, we talked, this is davar hama'amid, a catalyst, right? So, like rennet in cheese. If we have non-kosher rennet, which we explained would come from the stomach of an animal that has not been properly slaughtered. That's the problem right here.
Or unkosher gelatin is the same issue, right?
Right, or non-kosher gelatin is the same issue. They use like all sorts of animal bones to create these gelatins. So you can have non-kosher animal bones being used. And what is this doing? It's having an outsized effect on our food. Even though we might have very little of this substance there, and it might be nullified in 60, because it's having this outsized effect and it's solidifying or it's gelling our mixtures, then we're not going to call it nullified. Right, so, okay. Now, so now we've got as new material, that was all review of what we did last time. As new material, we can start to think about subsequent adjustments to the ratio of the kosher and non-kosher foods. Okay. Now let's read what Rabbi Forst here has to say in this great book, The Laws of Kashrut. Frequently, after non-kosher food has been nullified in a majority or a 60-to-1 ratio, so batal berov or batal b'shishim, additional non-kosher foods fall into the mixture. Should one then consider the nullified non-kosher food as non-existent since it has become batal? Or perhaps the non-kosher food was merely in a dormant state, that is, it was inactive and unable to affect the nature, but nevertheless retained its potential non-kosher status. Consequently, it may later combine with any additional non-kosher matter to affect the mixture. We're getting this? So, similarly, consider the question in reverse. Non-kosher food fell into a mixture which was insufficient in quantity to nullify it. As a result, the entire mixture became prohibited. Can additional kosher food matter combine with the original kosher food to nullify the non-kosher food? Or perhaps, once the original mixture became prohibited, since it did not contain sufficient kosher food to nullify the non-kosher food, the entire mixture assumes a non-kosher status. Consequently, the original kosher food is not only unable to combine with additional kosher food to affect a bittul, it actually becomes non-kosher food. Thus, when one requires a majority or a ratio of 60 times the original mixture to affect a bittul, a nullification. In this section, we will discuss the two possibilities: additional non-kosher food added to a mixture containing nullified non-kosher food, and kosher food added to a mixture containing non-kosher food that initially lacked the required amount for bittul.
Just a question, although something tells me this shouldn't be kosher to do, but so if you have a mixture and it can't be neutralized because the ratio is less than 1 in 60. In other words, there's too much kosher food and non-kosher food in there. Like, so you don't make the only 1 in 60 ratio. Are you permitted? I don't think you're allowed to do this intentionally, but are you permitted to take more kosher food and put it in there so you make the ratio?
Right, okay.
Is that a kosher thing to do?
Right.
Because I don't think you're allowed to intentionally cheat.
Exactly. So, and that is one clarification that needs to be made at the outset here. You are never allowed to intentionally adjust
the numbers.
Right, adjust the bittul ratio. So that you cannot do, no. So we're talking about something fell in accidentally later, right? Or we're talking about
You discover it after it's cooked. Like your neighbor says, oh, the meat I gave you the wrong package. I think that wasn't kosher. Like it's already been cooked and you got the mixture there.
Right. No, but here we're talking about, so that would only be the initial. Here we're talking about additional amounts that
Right.
we've already judged something to be nullified, for example. Now something else falls in there. So additional non-kosher food falls in there. Is this going to combine with what we just had nullified to say that the nullified part then reawakens to join with the additional non-kosher food to render the whole thing non-kosher then? Right, that's the idea. Okay, but once again, just to be clear, it is not permissible, so l'chadchila, initially to add more kosher food, for example, to increase the ratio, to knock out the non-kosher food. That we cannot do. So once we've discovered, once your neighbor comes and said, I gave you the wrong meat, then that's the discovery. And from there, then that is our state of affairs, and we don't
Play with it.
Right, we don't play with it. Right. Okay. So we'll talk about these cases in the next class. For whatever reason, we do eat turkey. It's accepted, and and even though I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I do enjoy the Thanksgiving kitchen, let's say, and so Shabbos we will have a turkey dinner. So with in Yisad Hashem good stuffing.
Rabbi Soloveitchik would smile.
Rabbi Soloveitchik would smile. Right. All right. So then I wish everyone a good continued week. And we'll pick up with Choser V'Nior, so something that returns to become animated next week. All right. So good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Have a nice.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.